relationships. My name is Sophie Passon and I am a relationship expert, international speaker and best-selling author. I have decided to start this podcast because, in my opinion, relationships are currently not being portrayed as what they really are. Whether you're watching the news or on social media, the perception of what we're seeing is giving people the wrong end of the stick, to be frank. And my aim is to talk about what happens in the real world, talk about real stories, what real people do and go through, as opposed to creating expectations of something that actually doesn't exist. So here today we have Gemma Warren, who is going to talk to us about meeting a husband the other side of the world and yet finding out that he lives down the road from her. Hi, Gemma.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm very good, thank you.
Good. So tell me a little bit about yourself.
Okay, so I'm now 35. I'm originally from Liverpool, but I don't have the strong accent, obviously. Mm-hmm. I've been married 3 years now. I have a 2-year-old son. And yeah, I met my husband on the other side of the world in a pub. And as a result, when I came home, I moved down to Southampton and the rest is history.
Fair enough. So tell me, before you went on your round the world trip, what were your relationships like? How old were you? How did it all happen?
Yeah, I'd say I've had a couple of serious relationships that have lasted a couple of years. Long-term boyfriend at university, which was sort of long distance. Mm-hmm. I then finished university. I was with a guy who I bought a house with for about 4.5 years. And I guess I kind of thought that was one that was going to last, but actually I felt there was more. I wanted more from a relationship, more from life. Mm-hmm. So the kind of end of that relationship, going through living with somebody for 12 months, not with them, and selling a house was a pretty painful experience. And then I jacked my job in and I went travelling to Australia.
So would you say that you kind of did that as a reaction to splitting up?
It was probably one of the reasons behind the split, actually. I just think I realised I didn't want to settle. And some seeds have been sown through experiences and meeting people and just sort of looking at life in a different way. So I think it was the catalyst for actually realising what I wanted, and I wasn't with the right person.
And I think that's a very good point, because a lot of people just settle. They're together, they've bought the house together, or they haven't, but they just go through the motions of like, oh, we might as well get married and have kids, and actually they're not necessarily best suited. They're just kind of like ended together.
Yeah.
And they're kind of going through the motions as opposed to having any sort of excitement and love and what it is really about.
Yeah, and I think, marriage was actually one of the things that I've always wanted. I've always valued marriage, so I've always wanted, I think it's an achievement to become a wife or a husband. And that particular partner was not interested in it whatsoever. And it was a bit like, well, if I can see why he doesn't want to get married, why can't he see why I do want to get married? Mm-hmm. And it was, to me, I can't really understand how we stayed together for so long. But
prodding through life.
Yeah. And I think, sometimes you just wake up and, I've always had that image in my head of that's, motivated me for traveling, whereas when I'm an old granny rocking in my rocking chair, what am I going to tell people that I did? And I just thought, God, if I just stayed and nothing had changed, I wouldn't have had anything interesting to say. That's not to say obviously people that don't go traveling don't have a story to tell.
It's important.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I never, the decision to go traveling was never about love. It was never about meeting somebody. It was about doing something for myself and having my own story and just living life.
Which is also an interesting point, because I think that most people who meet the right one, shall we say, are normally in a place where they're quite content in their own skin and happy.
Yeah.
Being single and doing their own things, not expecting someone to do it for them or to complete them in that way.
No, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. I agree with that.
So how did you meet?
So we met in a pub in Perth, which is in Western Australia. We were introduced by a mutual friend over Facebook, and it was just by chance that my husband Paul had finished a big long road trip, and I had just landed in Perth, and it was the first time I was travelling on my own. And literally by chance, she went, "Oh, you two happen to be in the same place at the same time. I think you'd get on. You should meet for a drink. You're both English. Go and have some fun." Not in that sense.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
So she introduced us over Facebook. We arranged to meet each other probably like a week or so later. And then I went on a winery tour with a group of UK doctors, which was hilarious because these guys had obviously just moved over to Australia. They were earning mega bucks of money. They're all out on, getting pissed. Can I swear?
Yeah, you can swear. Don't worry, I swear all the time.
I'd had a few drinks, and then I went over to a kind of student area in Perth to meet Paul in the pub. I want to say the Elephant and Castle, the Elephant and Wheelbarrow.
Random.
And I walked in, and I was like, so I had a Facebook photo to look at, and then obviously I saw him in the pub, and I sort of just tapped him on the shoulder, and I was like, "Oh, hi, I'm Gemma," and he turned around and he went, "Oh, hello," so he was stood there in a Saints football shirt, his traveller shorts, his rucksack, and he'd been out drinking in the park with his mates. So. And he had this tattoo on his calf, which is funny because, as I've said to you obviously before this interview, if you asked me what my worst tattoo would be, it's a football badge and it's on a calf. And
that's exactly what it was. Yeah.
And it stood out like a sore thumb to me. I was just like, oh, wow. And then he followed it with, "Oh, I'd love to offer to buy you a drink, but I've had my wallet stolen and my mate is subbing me tonight." And I was like, aha. So I just got from being wooed by all these like UK doctors, lots of money, to meeting a skint student.
With a tattoo you don't like, in a Saints shirt, who's drunk, and with a lot of wallet.
Yeah, and he couldn't buy me a drink. So we chatted, we hung out, we had a bit of a laugh. He invited me back to his dorm, which he was sharing with 13 other lads, which, funnily enough, I said no.
I can't think why.
Yeah, and that was that. But in the time that, the kind of couple of hours we spent together, obviously he told me about where he'd been travelling, and I was planning to travel some of the route that he'd been. And I guess really this is how the conversation continued, because, on paper, I could say that Paul wasn't my initial type that if I saw in a pub, I'd be like, yes, definitely, you're the kind of guy that I would.
Which answers my next question. So you didn't know straight away was like Mr. Right. It kind of grew over time.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, so we had a period so we met and then we didn't see each other for probably about a month because he was busy working kind of 12, 14-hour days at this event that he was doing. And I was being some sort of au pair to an English family, but living in a really nice place. It was great. So we didn't have a chance to properly meet up again for ages, but we had a bit of banter on Facebook. And then I went traveling down this route which didn't have a lot of internet signal. So whenever I did find internet signal, I found I was messaging him and saying, "Oh, hey, I'm here. I've just had this ice cream at this place." And it was just the banter, it just grew. And obviously we both knew there was something there because, it was getting really flirty and just interesting. And then by the end of this road trip that I'd been on, I was just like, oh, the house I was staying at, nobody was in basically. And I said, it sounds like a dodgy line, doesn't it? I basically invited him over, cooked him a curry, and I said, if you want to do any washing, you can, because obviously he was living in this dorm. So So that was, we had a bottle of wine, had a nice evening together. He tried his luck again, as always. And then, we then basically had a couple of months of just, seeing each other, hanging out as two people just being single, having fun. And that was actually where we had the opportunity to, to realise I really like this person. This is some, we got to know each other, and we actually had similar stories in the fact that he went travelling, for the same thing. God, life's too short. Why the hell do I want to sit behind a desk and stay there? And he definitely had a quality that, I now absolutely love. And he's so motivated. He worked 3 jobs. He saved up for a year to have that money to go traveling and live life. I was fortunate in the fact I had a house to sell. And then once I sold it, I had the money there. But, that is who he is. And he definitely keeps us grounded in the fact that, life doesn't have to be about all the extravagance, but actually, it's what you make do. And we have the best times on some of the cheapest dates. It's great, but equally,
I think actually what you just said, the greatest sum of cheapest dates, that is key, because that's how you get to know someone. I'm not going to say they've got nothing, but do you know what I mean? You yes, it's very nice to be like wined and dined and whatever, but I think sometimes just having a fish and chips or a picnic or whatever on the beach.
Yeah, absolutely. It's about who you're with, exactly. And there's a number of dates in this period of 2 months that went totally wrong. There was one particular bar where I was living. It was like a nice harbour on the coast of Australia, and I really wanted to go to this bar. I think for some reason they had some sort of fruit cider that I really wanted to have, and it was on a Wednesday night. I invited Paul to, said, let's go on this date. And we couldn't get in the bloody place because he had the wrong shoes on. Right. And I'd all week, I said, I just want to go to this one bar. And we couldn't get in because of him, which obviously then it turns into a story, because we then ended up going to another bar. It was Halloween. We got egged as we walked around trying to get there, and ended up in basically this pub with 16-year-olds laughing at life. And apparently he had his best pint of Guinness in that pub, so it's...
There you go.
Yeah, exactly.
But it is. Sometimes it's the unexpected, when things are really well planned, and it's not as good fun, is it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, you do have to kind of just go with it sometimes. And like I said, I think whether it's because we had no expectations, we knew we were going to be in the same place for a couple of months, because Paul then came back to the UK. His trip was over. But those 2 months were obviously the best 2 months, because we just got to know each other with no expectation.
And I think this is the thing, expectations. I'm not going to say it's the root of all evil, but not far from it,
Yeah.
Because this is the thing, you just literally, you knew potentially there was no future in it because of circumstances.
Yeah.
But you just enjoyed every single moment instead of over analysing, thinking and wondering and expecting.
Yeah. And when we left each other, we booked a day together, and then he waved me off on the coach, because I basically was going straight to the airport to fly back across Australia. And then he had a few more weeks, and then he was going home to the UK. So, distance was getting bigger and bigger. And I obviously knew there was something really special about him, because I got on that coach and I did sort of a little cry to myself, because I was just like, oh my God, what's going on? He'll obviously laugh about this now. And I remember having a conversation with my brother a few days later. And my brother was obviously, trying to be all like, you'll meet someone else, it's all good, And I said, yeah, but what if I think I've met somebody that I really get and that I really want to be with, and now we're separated by the other side of the world, and it was a bit of a, oh, what the hell, what am I going to do?
So how long was that period of time for?
We were apart for about 5 months.
Okay.
So yeah, so we left it as, when I got back to the UK, we promised we would go to a beer garden and we would have an afternoon drinking together, wherever it was, whether we met other people, because obviously he could have met somebody, I could have met somebody, or whatever. We just agreed that was cool. And then obviously once he was back in the UK, I think, so he left early December, and then we sent each other Christmas presents. My mum sent him a Christmas card.
Okay.
And then by January, we both basically said, do you know what? I'm not interested in hanging out with anyone else. And we both said this at the same time, and it was like, are we cool with that? Yeah, we're cool with that. And then, 5 months later, I came home, and I landed on the 23rd of April or something. And then we met up in Bristol on the 26th of April. And then 2 years later, we got married on the 26th of April.
Right.
So it happened so it happened really quick, and
so from you landing, what happens next over the next couple of years?
So I came back. So my hometown is Cheltenham really now. So I came home and then obviously caught up with him. So we had a few weekends together, but obviously I came back and it was like, shit, I need to get a job, I need to do something. But then also he was in Southampton and I was in Cheltenham, which is a 2-hour drive. And it was like, well, I have a lot of friends, together, married, children, and I didn't have a job. And it was like, well, what's holding me here in Cheltenham? Obviously my family and my friends, but this was something, it was like, let's just take a risk. What's the worst that could happen?
Yeah, I can move back.
Down to Southampton. Yeah, it doesn't work out. That's fine. I'll just come back home. And yeah, so that's kind of, I think by the May, I'd properly moved down. And then by July, we rented our own flat together. So, I sort of, we have a friend who let me kind of come and stay. So bless her. She went from just sort of lending Paul a spare room for a few months, and then his girlfriend moved in. But again, it was just not about, like love is all about taking risks, but it's about, I think you do know when you want to give something a go and you want to give it your best shot. And that was literally all it was. We obviously,
and sometimes it's also very natural. Nothing was forced.
No.
Yeah. A lot of the time I see people and it's kind of they're trying to force the other person's hand. You can tell that from the way they're talking that actually the conversation doesn't flow that well. You can tell that they're more interested than the other person.
Yeah.
But it's so, I'm going to use the word desperate, but not in that bad connotation way, but more they just want to be loved. That they try and force the outcome, but when it is really natural, when you just, I'm not just going to say you just know, but when there's something like you've not experienced before, you just know because you've never experienced it before.
Yeah, and I think I totally get that when you've got other parts of your life that are going how you want them, and having that other person there, you haven't got that person to share your life with, your ups and downs.
That's hard.
It is hard, and it is hard to try and switch off and go and accept the whole, you'll meet the right person, they'll come into your life, but actually they will. And also, I don't know if it's the right or wrong thing to say, but I think my point of view is, I think there are lots of the right people out there for us. But your circumstances, they might come into your life for a bit, they might come into your life for the rest of your life. And I think
it's also a journey. We are ready and certain. I mean, my life in the last 3 years, but especially 12 months, has just been quite, not going to say dramatic, but, things have happened that it's been completely out of my control, and like dominoes falling over. And you're like, but why is this happening? And then a while later, you're like, oh, actually, I think I know why now. But, it's a journey. Sometimes, in my particular case, I've just turned 40, and up to about 3 years ago, I wasn't really ready to commit to anybody. And it wasn't because I'm a commitment phobe. It was just because I'm not quite the right person for me.
Yeah.
And you've got to accept that instead of like trying to force the social mold all the time.
Yeah. And I think you also have to know yourself. I think, the previous relationship I was in, I went through a horrible time, having to live with somebody that you weren't with. And there were other, things that went on that I obviously won't share, but it was a horrible time. But the time I then spent traveling, I can see it now. I now spent traveling. It's in the microwave, darling. Sorry.
Carry on.
I found out who I was and what I wanted, and I think my husband would say the same. He had a couple of long-term relationships, even longer than the ones I've been in, and they didn't work out because circumstances changed. But then he went traveling, and I met him as him, no expectation. We just hung out, we just had a great time and got to know each other. And then through that time together, we realized, hey, we've got some similar values, some similar stories. And actually I recognize you've got some
It's all right.
So yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah, completely. So what tips would you give someone who was maybe struggling to meet a partner and not necessarily very happy? Because I kind of agree with you. And in my book, one of the things I say is that the relationships that we have with others are a direct reflection of the relationship that we have with ourselves. So would you say that the key to meeting the right person, as we said earlier, is just work on yourself?
Yeah, I think
spend some time.
Yeah, I think probably one of the earlier things I said, which is don't settle.
Yeah.
If you're not happy, that doesn't mean, if you're with somebody, doesn't mean straight away just dump them, but work out why you're not happy. One of my bestest friends, after the relationship breakup I had, and I sort of found myself again, and she said she could see that. She could see that I was me again, because I just wasn't who I normally was with this person. For whatever reason, do you kind of you change yourself a little bit to kind of make it fit, or what if I did this, would the relationship be better? And there's no easy way to break up with somebody. There's no easy way to walk away from a relationship that you might have invested a lot of time in. I think,
as you say, you've got to recognise the point where actually it's no longer working.
Yeah.
Because I think it's quite actually devastating to watch two people who are not getting on. And if there is no way to reconcile, not that there's obviously, something drastically wrong, but just that they've just evolved in different directions. I think someone needs to do something, because it's not fair on either of them to keep going.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I felt comfortable in the fact that it was like, I'm not meant to be with you and you're not meant to be with me. And that's fine, because you will find that person and I will find a person. So there's no easy way to do that, and by being yourself, you'll find people that are attracted to you for the real reasons, the right reasons. And equally, open your mind a little bit, not necessarily your eyes, because what you think you might like on paper isn't necessarily actually what you want. I think
and this is a point I wanted to make. There's so many people who say that actually the person that they've ended up with, they've first of all been friends with first, and then it kind of grew. And also that you shouldn't judge a book by its cover. There may not be your type, but what is a type? That doesn't mean that you didn't find him attractive. It's just that you don't know particular tattoos on the calf,
Yeah, exactly. And obviously that's not to say I didn't I didn't find aspects of him attractive. You know, absolutely, I fancy my husband. But if there was just certain things about him that I was just like, I've purposely come to meet you, but I might not have stopped and chatted as long as I had.
Yeah.
Because, you know, what I thought I might have wanted.
If you'd seen him online and met up in a pub, you might just have had one date.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, you've made the point better than I. And I think, I don't know, I've never been through the online dating, the swiping apps. I can't think of Tinder or, you know, a Match and all that kind of stuff. My husband did the whole Match thing, and I've, you know, had a few good nights from it, apparently.
Fair enough.
Yeah, but I think, you know, people are in the world. You just, I think the expectations, and just allow someone just to hang out with them, get to know somebody, and try not to focus on, oh, so is this person the one? Because
don't obsess with it.
I
used to run events for single people, which is kind of how I ended up doing what I'm doing now. And one of the things that actually used to wind me up a tad is that, you know, they were aimed at the 40 plus, so you'd get people that were 40 to 65, and what they couldn't get their head round, considering they've been through that path before, is that it isn't a Hollywood movie. You know, the ground is not going to open. Prince Charming ain't going to rock up on a white horse. You're not going to have fireworks in the background. There's no violins coming to the party.
Yeah.
And yet people expect that. And they're like, oh, but, you know, I've come here to meet someone. And I used to say, the average person knows 300 people, be it family, friends, long distance friends, colleagues, neighbours, whatever. If you meet somebody and you've got something in common, the likelihood is you will get on with her friends too. But they were so short-sighted that, as you said earlier, about, you know, sometimes you could meet someone, but depending on your circumstances, you wouldn't know. Well, I could have put anyone that was right for them right in front of them. They wouldn't have seen it.
Yeah, definitely. I think, I can't really think of what else to say about those points. It's just, it is about the open-mindedness. And
is there something you would have done differently? If you'd known, you know, let's say you're 18 years old and someone says to you, right, I'm going to tell you everything that's going to happen in your life until you're 35.
Yeah.
Do you think that would have been something you would have wanted to do differently?
No, because I know that the things that happened
for a reason.
Helped me to grow into the person that I am. And even now, you know, I think, sorry, just to go back to your point about it's not all romance and birds tweeting and all that, you know, our marriage is obviously, well, we've been married 3 years, that's great, and we've had a son, and I've gone, well, I have postnatal depression. Now, that has totally rocked my world and wasn't expected, and it really has impacted me. And that, you know, that could have easily, I'm not saying it could have broken our marriage, but it's another aspect to a relationship that neither of us saw coming. And so, so there are times that it's not all romance and everything's fine. And obviously it's not like that when you've got a newborn baby anyway. But I changed, and I have been working hard to get me back because it's important. And I think that just, you know, for me, that just confirmed I am with the right person, because he has, even though he can understand what I was going through mentally, he wanted to help however he could, and we've worked through it, you know, and I'm getting better.
Cool, I'm glad to hear it. Well, thank you so much for your time, and all the listeners, well, I shall see you next week. Thank you.